You know, I saw this story cross my wire and it just made me sad. It made me depressed. So on this channel, like I often do, I will share that sadness and depression with all of you out there in the audience, because in this video, a pastor, somebody who is of religious faith, who also happens to be an activist trying to reduce youth violence, who also is driving for Uber because he's struggling financially, was carjacked and shot repeatedly by the very same type of youth that he seeks to work with, seeks to help. And while fortunately he has survived, unfortunately, the same policies that have been instituted in the city of Milwaukee to enable youth offenders have not been changed, so this will likely happen again. And unfortunately, the perpetrator of this heinous attempted murder during a carjacking likely will be out sooner than you think. Now, we're going to talk about this, but before we do, I want to say thank you to everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Evan Simmons is now recovering at home from the many gunshot wounds he now carries. He has a message to that 15-year-old boy who was taken into custody in connection to the shooting.
Got another chance to get it right. And I heard that while I was unconscious. You know, that was the message given to me. You get another chance to get it right.
So first and foremost, I just want to say, even though I'm not a religious person, never been of faith or anything like that, I got to give credit where credit is due to actually religious people who try to live up to their principles. This man was shot repeatedly. We'll get into exactly how many times a little bit later in this video. He was shot over a car by a 15-year-old thug who I guarantee is going to have a rap sheet that's a mile long. He almost died from this. He's suffering significant after effects of these gunshots, but one of the first things he says is that that kid's life is not over. He has an opportunity to turn it around because he believes in redemption. And to be clear, even though I am not someone who wants to go soft on criminals like this, especially criminals that would try to take a man's life for a vehicle, I also believe in redemption, and I do think there is a way to turn this around. However, you need some significant prison time, in my opinion, when you commit such a heinous attempted murder. But let's get into the clips so you can hear the details of this case.
A hopeful Simmons is currently recovering from 12 gunshot wounds. He says it's a miracle he's still here.
I have two right here, one under my arm, one in my chest. What about abdomen?
Yeah, you heard that right. This man was shot 12 times for his Uber vehicle. 12 times for a car. This was an attempted execution. He also has significant damage and everlasting disabilities that I would like to get into, but just think about that. A 15-year-old thug, a 15-year-old criminal, somebody that this guy wants to advocate for, that he wants to divert from violence, decided to try to kill this man, viciously execute him for a car. Total lack of conscience by this individual, somebody that needs to be locked away for a very long time, and at just 15 years old, he did this.
His left hand partially disabled and now having to use a cane.
I was shot in the ear, the equilibrium is gone.
He says he was shot several times on October 9th while driving for Uber, picking up a customer near 55th and Custer on Milwaukee's north side.
So yeah, he has nerve damage in his wrist. He has to walk with a cane because he was shot in the ear. His equilibrium is all thrown off, and this was all over not just the car. I'm sorry for understating the fact that this 15-year-old had virtually no value for human life, but also for a cell phone.
According to a search warrant, police found Simmons on the ground bleeding from gunshot wounds, his phone and car stolen.
That's what this absolute scumbag wanted and was willing to kill for, was willing to overkill for, because again, he shot this man 12 different times.
Police have arrested a 15-year-old boy in connection to the shooting, tracked by a phone number displayed on the Uber app.
And of course, not only was this criminal incredibly vicious, incredibly selfish, incredibly thuggish, but he was also completely stupid. The guy called the Uber with the account associated with his own phone number. So he had no actual plan to get away with this crime. He was just looking for that instant gratification and was willing to kill somebody and basically sign his name to the murder for the gratification of driving a car and having a cell phone. Absolute scum, through and through. But to make matters worse, this is a part of an overall trend that we're seeing in the city of Milwaukee. Remember, I covered on this channel the insane increase in car thefts and carjackings in the city of Milwaukee. We talked about how they had over 10,000, and in a city of 590,000, that means there's one car theft for every 59 residents in the city of Milwaukee, aka it's completely off the charts. And as I said before, and as we talked about when we reviewed that Kia Boys documentary, most of these individuals do carry guns on them. They are ready to commit violence. Just because they're stealing the cars mostly through that Kia glitch doesn't mean they won't continue and won't use other methods. And a perfect example of this is what we saw on display right here.
And although Simmons is left with physical wounds of that horrific night, he has found it in his heart to forgive the young man in custody.
I prayed, asked God to forgive him. I already forgave him. I never, not one moment, had ill feelings toward the guy.
Now look, to be clear, you as the victim are allowed to feel however you want to feel about your victimizer, about the perpetrator, about the criminal. I will not condemn the pastor for forgiving this individual. However, I want to make this perfectly clear that if I were in his position, I wouldn't forgive him. If this happened to somebody I cared about, I would not forgive him. In fact, this happening to the pastor, somebody I don't know except for the context of this story, I still don't forgive the perpetrator because this was absolute scumbaggery. And the problem is when you go soft on the criminal on an institutional level, when society is too quick to forgive, these people are released over and over and over again, given chance after chance. And this is the result of that. You think this guy just graduated to a cold-blooded murder or cold-blooded attempted murder in this carjacking, or do you think that there was a history behind it? Do you think somebody who would be so bold to summon an Uber with his own phone and then try to execute the driver of that Uber, an elderly man, by shooting him 12 times, clearly overkill, just started off like that? Or there's something to back this up? In my opinion, this is clear. This guy is used to committing armed robberies. He is fine with the prospect of killing, and he may have actually killed somebody before based on the viciousness and the cold-blooded nature of these actions. So absolutely not. I do not forgive him. I don't begrudge the pastor, the minister, for doing so. I understand that that is a part of his faith, but it is not a part of my faith in any way, shape, or form to forgive thugs like this.
Simmons, a man involved in his community helping to find an answer to curb violence within teens, says he hopes that young man changes his ways.
He also have another chance to get it right, whether he's on the street, incarcerated, whatever. You know, you got to change your lifestyle because what you're doing is not right.
Now, at least the pastor right here talks about incarceration as a solution for this individual. He hasn't gone completely soft on him. And by the way, don't think I did not notice during the B-roll that the pastor is at a basketball game, because yes, one of the ways that he sought to curb violence was through youth basketball. It wasn't quite midnight basketball. It wasn't the actual meme of this channel, but yes, this guy was involved in a basketball program for the youth, among many other various programs where he put the time and effort into trying to get them off the streets, divert them from criminality, only to end up in a situation where he was victimized and viciously so left to die on the streets in the cold of Milwaukee. And that is absolutely heartbreaking and shameful. Now, of course, we got to hear more about the perpetrator, who is not being identified by the local media due to his age, because I think this is crucial.
According to that search warrant, the teen was taken into custody November 7th. He could face possible charges of first-degree reckless injury.
Now look, as of right now, I could not find how this kid was charged in relation to this, but the fact that the local news reporter is saying that he could, as in maybe, he might, as in a top charge, face charges of first-degree, not attempted murder, reckless endangerment, is the exact problem that we have. Now, to be clear, even though I just said reckless endangerment, the woman actually said reckless injury, and this is in fact the correct charge. Much like the state of Wisconsin doesn't actually have murder as a statute, instead they call it first-degree intentional homicide, their attempted murder appears to be close enough to the approximate to reckless injury. So, let me read you the definition so you can understand and give you the potential sentence. So, first degree reckless injury. Whoever recklessly causes great bodily harm to another individual under circumstances which show disregard for human life is guilty of a Class D felony. Now, the sentence for this is actually 25 years and or $100,000 fine. Now, in terms of matters of law in the United States of America, typically what is referred to as a life sentence is 25 years to life. The three strikes law, that is quite famous in California, does it on this scale, and many other states in the union do this. This would be serious as proportionate to the crime, especially considering the fact that it's a youthful offender. However, it's speculated on whether or not they will charge him this way. And again, these are the penalties if he were to be charged as an adult. And when you're already going from that position as your top position, which is the youthful offender version of this and thus the lighter sentence, the chances of this person actually spending any serious amount of time in prison go down exponentially. Remember, he is age 15. So every little bit of care is going to be taken in order to mitigate the circumstances of this case. So what we're likely to see is that this individual is going to get a slap on the wrist, which based on his behavior and my presumed criminal history for this individual, pattern of behavior is not the proper recourse. I'm not saying that he needs to get the whole 25 years, but something significant, a good portion of that, more than they would do for the juvenile case, I think is warranted considering he committed an attempted murder obviously and clearly. Also, while this is technically close enough to the approximate in terms of the sentence, it's not actually the charge. You see, under Wisconsin law, they actually have an attempt statute which lays out the fact that any crime, any felony, when you attempt it, has its own sentence in proportion to that felony. It doesn't appear that there is going to be a charge of the attempted first-degree intentional homicide, and this is one of the places where I have a problem. So functionally, the charge with the 25-year potential sentence could be the same in terms, again, of its function, but in reality, this charge, the attempted first-degree intentional homicide, should be what is applicable under Wisconsin state law if they wanted to hit this person as hard as he deserves for those 12 shots fired. And this is the exact problem. There's a reason why attempted murder is treated almost as seriously, or should be treated almost as seriously as murder, because but for medical technology, but for the grace of God, if you're a religious person, this minister would be dead from those 12 gunshot wounds. Now, he might actually start a rap career post this as the minister, as the pastor. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. But the point is, you should treat this person like the heinous potential murderer that he actually is, because he did not have any regard for the life of this person. He did this for a car and a phone. He summoned an Uber driver in order to do this. He knew he was targeting somebody from within the community, somebody who was not doing all that well, and he deserves to be held to account for this, not get another slap on the wrist in a long series of slap on the wrist like what is being pushed by the district attorney's office in the city of Milwaukee. If you want this to not happen again, what you need to do is incapacitate people who are likely to reoffend. This guy is that kind of person. This kid has gone wrong. He needs consequences. The lack of consequences led him to this point, very likely, but it seems like Milwaukee is committed to this path regardless of how many good people within their city end up suffering the consequences of it. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social media. Support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute madness in the city of Milwaukee. Till next time.